2 seconds to get some.
The audio.
Just give me the thumbs up when you're ready.
That one, Tom.
Thumbs up. We're going. Okay. Reports. Youth Arc Dance Studio. Deputy. So moved. Look, the only question I have here is that there is a commercial valuation of nearly $32,000. Considering our financial constraints, that's the target that I'd hope we're going to be targeting for this return on council. Okay. Lord Mayor.
I just wondered whether the officer responsible wanted to speak to it at all, or no? Okay. But my understanding,
Lord
Chair,
Mayor, sorry, I don't want to think, but you know, if I want the officer to say something, I'll do so. I'm the chair. If you want to ask the officer a question, ask the officer a question. Thank you.
Yes.
What would you like?
And I did ask the officer a question.
Right.
So I'm just wondering whether the report I understand is about it being an EOI for more community sector organisations.
No, it's an open EOI. Correct?
And okay, is that the?
Yes. It's an open EOI.
Yes.
So anyone can.
And I'm just wondering about the TSO's previous interest in the area. Is that? I mean, I just think we've had a few sort of more direct approaches. I think TSO, but also there was the youth sector more broadly were approached us as well. So will those folks feel some sense of, or will we particularly go to them and let them know about this opportunity as well?
Chair, through you, so the EOI will be advertised, and certainly we know that there are a number of stakeholders who are interested in the venue. In terms of previous discussions with the TSO, which I think have largely occurred in closed council, we are not aware that there's any desire at this stage to progress that particular discussion due to larger constraints with the City Hall. So this is really about leasing one space within the building for, I guess, a shorter period of time.
Deputy?
Two questions arising through that, Chairman, then through you to Mr Short. So will the EOI process be weighted possibly for suitable not-for-profit businesses? And secondly, the access issues relating to upstairs, is that something that we need to address as landowner?
Chair, through you, I might just ask Ms Callick for a response in relation to the weighting of the criteria.
Yes, sure. Through you, Chair. It is our preference to have a not-for-profit aligned community organisation. As officers, that's our recommendation. We're looking for community outcomes, but obviously that's weighed up with the financial implications. So up until now, we have had a commercial return for community programs with some alignment. So that's what we'll be going for as best case scenario. But certainly we will be weighting it towards community outcomes.
And Chair, in terms of the limitations of the building, I mean, it is as is. So again, to fix those is a complex and costly exercise, which we're not ready to do at this stage. So it is offered in the knowledge that it does have certain constraints from an access point of view.
Okay. So I'll put the item. All those in favour? All those against? Item's carried. Local Government Association meeting call for motions. We've got one from the Lord Mayor. Everyone's had a copy of that. Would you like to move that as an amendment, Lord Mayor, please?
Yeah, I'll move that one.
Okay. All those in favour of the amendment? Sorry?
The amendment.
Deputy?
Because,
Yes, you may.
yeah, look, I think that's it's a really sensible move. So the motion itself calls on the state government to commission equal opportunity Tasmania, right? Okay.
It's really just to look under the bonnet, and they're doing it for state parliament anyway.
Yes.
So I think I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be a major impost to ask them to also do something separate. And of course, they wouldn't literally be able to look at every single local government. It's more to look at the sector and ask, probe into some of these questions about whether people are clear enough about their, what they should do and what their coverage is and some of those issues. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Just through you, Chair. So it's in relation to online harassment for anybody, but certainly making sure it covers all females.
Yeah, and not just
everybody. I can see it's.
Yeah, it shouldn't just say online. It should just be. I think that was just an example of what came up on the survey, but it's really just workplace culture and safety in the local government sector, but for elected representatives more so than staff, because I think staff are fairly confident about the pathway they take.
I'm supportive of the idea, and safety and harassment and bullying is fine, but the word workplace culture is huge. Are we defining it well enough, or are we only are we limiting it to bullying, harassment and safety? Because workplace culture is huge.
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of commentary about this, because obviously this is starting to happen now. There's the federal parliamentary one. There's there's quite a few.
Excuse me, please. We're not having a conversation across the table.
Okay, I'm just trying to get to a clarity on how big this is. Chair, because workplace culture is that big. Safety, bullying and harassment.
We could add the word workplace safety culture or workplace safety. Just leave, instead of culture, put in safety, if that would be preference.
I think you just change the word to culture to health and safety. I think that's what the name of the game is.
Yeah,
Okay.
sounds reasonable to me. Yep.
So just change the word Lord Mayor, you happy with that?
Yep.
So change the word workplace culture to workplace health and safety. I think that covers the overall thing. Okay, so I'll put that amendment. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? A substantive motion by...
Oh, hold on.
Sorry?
So I've got a suggestion as well, if I may.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
no problem.
yeah. So I think I know that there's review of the Local Government Act, and there has been quite a lot of discussion from varying perspectives, I suppose, on the Code of Conduct and the strength of the Code of Conduct. And I think it would be useful to call for an urgent review on the Code of Conduct processes in order to strengthen those processes.
I think.
Question, Chairman. Wasn't there something already happening?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that.
I'm pretty sure there's been at least 2 recent motions to Legat conferences about the Code of Conduct and reviewing it. Yeah.
All right. So where are we up to with that? Through you, Chair.
I don't know.
Through you, to any officer, does any officer know?
Through you, Chair, I'm getting shakes at the back of the room,
No.
so we have to take that on notice.
Well, can that be taken on notice and get back to us, please? Okay?
Yep.
And hopefully before the council meeting, so that way they're...
Yep.
Oh, actually, could someone get back to the deputy on that?
Yes.
So that way the deputy's aware of it, and if the deputy needs to make any further amendments, it does so. Okay?
Chair.
You happy with that, deputy?
Yep.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Items carried. Council policy manual review. Is there any specifics in areas that any elected members have? Alderman Sexton.
I've got 3.
Can you give us the page number?
Yes, I can. So if you go to page 39, page 39 of 171. The first one is leases to non-profit, not-for-profit organisations. I'm happy with the fact that we've got. Where are we? I'm happy that we've got this new element to it, which includes a little bit more detail about looking into the not-for-profit organisation that's applying for subsidised rental, but it doesn't say what we do. So, for example, it says that we will want evidence of all related parties' transactions and arrangements in place, etc., and conflicts of interest, etc. It doesn't say what we then do. So. My concern is that we will get all of this information and we won't know what to do with it. What a lot of other councils do is that they have a matrix which does something similar to what the Deputy was just talking about a moment ago, and that is they weight certain elements. So, for example, if the board members are paid if there's if you know board membership is paid, then that would be marked down. That would be a weight against that particular application. If there were substantial related party transactions, then that would also weight down the application, and what that then does is it affects the percentage of the valuation that ultimately council is prepared to waive. And in some cases it might be that it's zero. So if the chairman is taking $150,000 a year through a related party transaction out of, then we might say under those circumstances we're not going to waive $1. If, however, the board members are getting paid a $5,000 annuity, we might say, okay, well, we're happy enough with 75% or 50% of the valuation. And I did actually send that information to the former general manager, so that when it came back to us, we did have a workable approach to this. I don't think what we've got here is workable. I don't think it doesn't tell us what to do. It just says we'll collect the information. Well, so what? So there are, for example, Canada Bay in New South Wales has an excellent policy where they have a matrix to weight things. So I'm happy to forward that to the acting general manager so that we can have a proper look at this, so that when it comes to us, we actually know what to do with the information. There are some circumstances where a not-for-profit organisation, although it might generate large amounts of money, and although the directors might do very well out of it, because of the benefit to the community, we might still choose to provide some sort of subsidy. But we have to have a process for determining that.
Norris?
So I would recommend that we do not finalise this particular one, that it be deferred, so that we can develop a proper matrix for so council can make a decision with the information that we are now asking for.
Okay, well, we can defer this one here. I'm happy with that. If the other parts of the committee, the officers shaking their heads as well, yes. So I'll accept that as a deferral in a moment for that particular part. Is there anything else?
Yes, page 63, residential parking permits in non-metered areas. So there's a couple of issues. One of them is just we've changed in policy part 2. It's changed household to residence, but then it goes on to speak about household throughout the rest of the document. So if you look at 6, then the number of permits can be issued to a household. I think that's supposed to be corrected and it becomes resident. Also, there's no reference at all to consistency. A number of other councils around Australia have consistency in terms of residential parking permits. So, for example, there are streets in Battery Point where residential parking permits apply for 7 days a week, and others where they only apply for 5, and yet the residential permit cost is the same for both parties. And in some cases, a Saturday, for example, when the market is on, the residents are seriously disadvantaged, and yet the residential parking permit's only Monday to Friday. So there are issues like that, and I'm sure it's the same in places like North Hobart and others. So that's one issue which I think we need to deal with.
Again, would it be more prudent for this component again to be deferred?
Well, probably, but I just want to quickly raise the issue. And the other issue, which is important, there is a reference to businesses in this, but it doesn't then go on to say that there's any non-permit or non ability for residents to not have parking permits for trucks and commercial vehicles. So if you go around, you will see that there are large trucks in some cases that are clearly commercial, but they're not residential, parked in residential parking areas with permits, because they happen to be the truck that is owned by the owner of the house. Now, given that there is in here something that says that if you are operating a business, then you won't get one. The owners or tenants of properties with off-street which is either commercialised by the owner or utilised by non-residents will refuse residential parking permits to park on the street, and yet if you have a truck that you're running your business from, you can park on the street. So I just think we need to have a look at that, because
vehicles of non-commercial nature.
Yeah. So this should only relate to vehicles of a non-commercial nature. It already excludes caravans, trailers and non-drivable vehicles, but it doesn't exclude very large trucks with trailers on the back of them. So there are two issues that I would like looked at, please.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, then Deputy.
Just related to that policy, I support deferring it to look into it more, and just wanted to flag that I do feel that in some cases, in these sort of suburban shopping precincts, I wonder whether a business could, some of the small businesses could get one parking permit, which I know, like, I'm not talking about the city so much, but like the small shopping areas, and they say, well, I pay my rates and I've got a coffee shop or whatever. Can I have a parking permit? No, I don't know the answer, but I'd like the advice from the staff about whether they think that's a slippery slope or not, because these are, they are within the precinct, they're in residential areas, they do pay rates. I'm not saying that they get one for every single staff member, but can that business get one permit? So that was one thing. And I also had, do we have a system where they're all payable on one day? Like, there seems to be some sort of rush towards one day of the year when they're all due. Can I just ask the director if that's the case? Is there a...
Mr. Carr, I think it's Mr. Carr, Mr. Noy. Which one of you?
Look, I need to take that one on notice and provide...
So take that on notice. Thank you.
In relation to that.
Okay.
Coming back to your other question in relation to commercial enterprises, we have resisted that in the past, because it is a bit of a slippery slope. We are trying to provide for residential parking habits and those environments, not necessarily commercial on street parking.
I'll just throw this at you, just sorry, Mr. Noy, you don't have to answer it, but when you're doing this report, I want to throw about what is commercial and what is not. There's a lot of sedan cars that have got because they got their thing, are they considered commercial? They're considered commercial only on one component, but they are actually things. So that's where you've got to try and find the balance. Anyway,
I was talking about trucks.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, but I'm just saying, be careful of the word commercial. Deputy.
So it's relating to this as well, and I just have a question. Given we have, we're trying to use the road space and parking space a lot more effectively. We're trying to get as many, and we've done some of those upgrades in areas such as North Hobart. What sort of limitations can we have on trailers being parked in one spot? Forever. Yeah. How do we address that? Because why is a trailer that may be used once a month, may be used once a year, is parking outside the front of a house?
Chairman, through you, I'm happy to defer to Mr. Noy or Mr. Carr, but my understanding is that if a trailer, in the eyes of the law, is a registered vehicle, so it's entitled to be on a space. That's my understanding.
Mr. Noy.
Yes, that's correct. If it's a registered vehicle and it's within an area that is not time limited in terms of car parking, then it's entitled to be parked on the road.
So I want to take this further. So how do we get that sort of change to occur? Because they're there permanently.
We'll take that one on notice.
Take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank
Does that
you.
mean that particular item will also be deferred subject to further work?
That's
Thank
the
you.
intent.
Okay, and the final one that I've got, and I apologise, is page 95, and that's the... Oh, sorry.
If I may just continue with this particular thing. The part 10 on page 64 of that is talking about a temporary resident permit is available for use by the resident's nominated visitor or trade person at a monthly charge as determined by council. So that could be. So do we ever advertise that? In situations where somebody might be doing some work, like some renovation, and they have a parking permit for the tradie?
Chair, through you, Deputy, do you mean do we advertise that the pass is available or that it's being used?
Do we let people who might be doing that sort of work You know, like they might have had a development approval. Do they find out about the availability of that? Because I know, you know, it can be a problem if you're doing some work in front of your place. Problematic.
Over and above what might be on our website, I suspect we don't. But again, Mr. Noy, do you have any further advice?
Other than really does depend on the nature of the property that's being renovated. If they've got ample on-site parking, then there wouldn't be a need. But yeah, I think you're right, Acting General Manager. I think it's what information is on our website, and we don't publicise it as such.
Okay, well, I don't know how thank you, I don't know how useful that might be or available that information might be. And just a further question in part 11, which is still on page 64, transferable permits can be issued as follows. One, in the exceptional circumstances that no single vehicle is consistently used by the resident. Can you just explain that to me, please? What's the exceptional circumstance referring to?
Chairman, through you, I would suggest this is in the policy because maybe in fact it has happened in the past. Again, whether Mr. Noy has any further information, but usually an appearance like that of a statement of policy is because that situation has actually arisen in the past and a previous council has seen fit to have that clause then put into the policy.
You've taken the words out of my mouth, Acting General Manager.
Okay.
So no relevance in particular. Yeah, there's no.
Not that I'm personally, familiar with, but again, I'm happy to come back with any examples because it would be a response to.
We'll see it's coming back. Bring that example back, please.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. I think one of the examples of that is where a property might be used in like an Airbnb example or a bed and breakfast or thing where it's not a single car being used, but it's being transferred to a temporary resident of the building, but it's to the residents, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's the second clause to that part, I think. Anyway, okay, I'm happy to get that. Thank you.
It is just related to parking permits again. Just whether the current policy covers carers or whether the provision of a temporary permit for a tradesperson. I mean, I have had a couple of examples where elderly people are quite sick and need a carer to come in, like whether we can look at that as well, because it's not just about tradies coming and using a vehicle. It might be around a Meals on Wheels or a nursing service, or and again, you wouldn't want it to be a permanent purchase, but it might be while someone's sick or in transition to a nursing home or that sort of thing.
Look, I'd like to just try and assist here because we can go down the track of finding a permit for that person. In Melbourne, if you want a parking permit, you are actually giving a parking permit for the resident. There is one parking permit for that resident. Now, whether it's a carer, whether it's anybody, that parking permit goes in the car that's visiting or that's at that site on that day. I actually mentioned this to Mr. Carr. Did I mention it to you, Mr. Carr? No, it might have been the previous. That could be one way of going for the permits, and that permit is specific to that resident, that residence, but it has all stipulations on what you cannot do with it or what you can do with it. And that way there's a carer going on the day, that carer can put that on that car. So what we do is we actually give it to the vehicle rather than the resident. So maybe we should give consideration, and the City of Melbourne does it. I had one in Carlton, whereas, if I've got even a visitor coming for the day, right, the visitor can use it as long as it's not I'm not double dipping, and you can only use it for one space at a time. So that could be a way of solving a lot of the issues with our parking permits.
Chairman, can I also, in relation to Lord Mayor's specific query, Clause 10 is probably wide enough to cover that at the moment because it deliberately has etc. in there, which I think, for me, reading that is an indication that it's meant to contemplate that there would be other uses, not those just listed in the policy.
Okay.
So in that particular circumstance, I would be satisfied that clause 10 would apply.
Also, considering the points I just made, and considering this is coming back, could that also come back with some, just do a little bit of research on that? Interesting. It could be the best way of solving the problem. Deputy.
Yeah, because it is mentioned in other parts of,
Okay.
these documents.
All right, now, Alderman Sexton,
Yeah, this is my
95.
final one, and I apologise for holding up.
95.
So the page 95, which is the legal expenses, which has been changed quite significantly, so I think it's worth just noting it and maybe asking some questions. So it looks as though one of the things that's been changed is that the General Manager will no longer be authorised to approve the initial legal consultation, but simply will be authorised to obtain professional external legal advice. So I'm assuming that by that would mean council's external legal advice. Through you, Chair, does that what that mean? Because that's what that implies. The General Manager is authorised to obtain. It's not saying that the elected member is authorised to obtain. At the moment, the elected member is authorised to obtain the initial legal advice as approved. That's the change. That's a definite change.
Are you referring to part 2, the General Manager inquire of the council's councillors and officers insurer?
No, I'm talking about so under the bit in orange on page 95, two down, it says in determining whether an individual elected member is entitled to reimbursement according to this policy, the General Manager is authorised, and it's been crossed out to approve initial legal consultation and it's been replaced with just 2. So that means the General Manager is no longer approving the initial legal consultation. He's simply obtaining professional external legal advice that the circumstances of an elected member's claim satisfy the criteria. So that seems to me to no longer allow the General Manager, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, I'm just highlighting the fact that that seems to now be a change which no longer allows the elected member to get their own initial legal consultation, but the General Manager has to do it to make sure that it meets the criteria before any money's paid.
I read, sorry, Alderman Sexton, I understand what you're saying. I read that completely different. I read that the General Manager is to obtain professional external legal advice that the circumstances of the elected members' claims satisfy the criteria.
Yes.
The General Manager obtaining it. So normally speaking, if the General Manager obtains professional external legal advice, it comes from the panel. It comes from whichever panel of legal practitioners, as I understand it, that the council has agreements with, and that panel is referred to further in the document, or maybe earlier in the document, where the expenses are not to exceed what council's external legal, contracted officers normally charge, because there's obviously different lawyers charge different amounts of money. So there are a few things going on there. It also says the quantum of costs sought to be reimbursed is not being unreasonable. Well, I have no idea what that means. Every time I've heard of a bill from a lawyer, I've always thought it was unreasonable. So in some places, some councils, they cap it. They say up to $10,000. I've got Sydney or Melbourne or one of them. So that's something that I think we need to consider, capping it, because if you go to a lawyer and you just simply say, go for it, you can charge whatever you like as long as it's initial legal advice, well, they will. So, I think we need to put something around that. And the other point, which is more controversial, is that there are a number of councils which only reimburse legal costs associated with, for example, a code of conduct complaint, where the matter, where the councillor has been found to be innocent, as in no guilt is at all allocated to the councillor, and only then will the council reimburse the legal costs. So, I mean, I think that's another thing we should consider, because it has always bothered me that councillors, elected members, can be reimbursed for legal costs and then be found to be guilty of whatever the breach of the code of conduct was. There are a number of issues. Once again, I don't know whether, Chairman, you want to defer
Well, this
it?
one here should be deferred as well, taking on board.
Because we need to clarify that issue that you and I don't fully understand, Chairman, about what that new paragraph with the approved initial legal consultation deleted actually
I've got a
means.
different version to you, but yeah, I agree, that needs to be done.
Chair, can
Yeah.
if committee is of a mind to defer it, which I'm very happy with, it might just be worth, though, hearing from Mr Jackson just as to the intent of some of these changes, if you're happy with that.
Well, look, don't get me wrong, look, fine enough, but if it's going to come back, we're just going to rehash it after. I'm not being thing, but if it's going to come back, you've heard, I think Mr Jackson's heard what's been said, so just take that on board, and when you come back with your report, I think that's the best way of doing it. Or else we're going to discuss the intent. I think we're better off discussing what is coming forward. Lord Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, support Alderman Sexton's points, in particular around the code of conduct. I feel like it is meant to be a sort of slightly non-legal forum. I mean, I know it's quasi-legal, but many of the then they don't encourage any legal representation in the hearings and these sort of things, and many of the community members that go into these processes don't necessarily have lawyers representing them. So I support the idea of some sort of cap, or it's at least some sort of guidance for elected members or for the General Manager in understanding, well, for an average code of conduct complaint, you should be looking in the range of, maybe it's in terms of hours of support, so that again it's sort of kept at a reasonable level, because if it gets too complicated and there's lots and lots of legal back and forth, it can all just become. It's not just about the cost, because I know it's covered by the insurance, but it's about the accessibility of the process for us, and for the community member who might be aggrieved and hasn't necessarily got any legal support at all. So yeah, I support some of those ideas anyway.
Well, we're deferring this anyway, so okay.
So
Deputy.
just on the bottom of page 96, it's the retirement function, and it's not so much that it's about a retirement function for long-serving elected members, but could you just explain through you to the acting general manager why the addition of consecutive full terms has been placed there?
For you, Chair, actually, I'll ask Mr Jackson to answer that question.
Through you, Chair, it's just to avoid any ambiguity in the original drafting.
So I'd like to challenge that and try and remove that, because I know, like, if I've not so much in council, but certainly in my working life, I've had to take leave to look after my father when he was unwell. I've stood for election and had to take leave, and so I haven't had a consecutive time of working at an institution for 15 years or something. So that's not recognised. So I think it might discriminate against a certain sector of people who may not be there the whole time. So can we remove that, please?
Just Chair, I would have thought maybe to help that the period of approved leave wouldn't have affected your term. So don't, if you take leave, if you actually resign.
Okay, so
allow all the times to speak. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you resign or retire for the balance of a term, then I agree with you that you wouldn't have a full term. But if you're simply taking leave, approved leave to carers leave, etc., it won't affect at all your consecutive period.
Chair, I have some concerns about the consecutive, because, as we know, this is an elected position, and not everybody who's been here for a certain amount of time has been elected for the entire time. So some people have come in, they've been voted out, and then they've made the effort to try again, and they've come back in. So if you don't count that first 3-year term, say, or 4-year term, or whatever, 4-year term, then because they were voted out for a period of time, and in some cases they might even be elected back in on a count back after a year or 6 months or whatever it is, then they haven't served 3 consecutive terms, which would be 12 years, which is a long time, and therefore they wouldn't be eligible. Now, I'm not sure, to be honest, that I will want a farewell dinner, but if I did, and I'd been here for a total of 14 years, but not 3 consecutive 4-year terms, then I might think that that's a little bit unreasonable. So I have some sympathy, and I don't know whether that'll help with what the deputy is concerned about, but the use of the word consecutive, I think, is unnecessary and is discriminatory against those people who might be voted in and out, but still allocate a huge proportion of their life to the service of this council.
Thank you. Just before I go, Deputy, may I ask you a question? I agree with you, actually. I agree with you as well. I know I can understand the intent, but and let's see how a word creates a problem. This is one of those situations. Would it be more feasible to use just the word 3 full terms? It doesn't have to be consecutive as long as someone has served 3 terms. I don't know.
Yep, so we're talking, I mean, they're
Probably
4
3
years now.
Or you could say 3 terms. Yeah, 3 terms.
3 full terms.
Yeah, 3 full terms, yeah. And if you want...
Remove the word consecutive and just say 3 full terms. Sorry? Sorry.
Just to clarify, Chair, that you all agree that 3 terms, that is significant. So we can, it can be 3 terms, not necessarily consecutive.
Okay, so 3 full terms. So we're happy to remove the word consecutive there. Deputy, you comfortable with that now?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I take your point.
Leave of absence, for sure.
Leave of absence is not a problem, but all that. But when it says 3 full terms, it means that you were elected for 3 terms, you were there for 3 terms, and that's it.
And my point is really about, there are things that come up in life that may not mean that you can serve consecutive terms.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're removing the consecutive, okay?
Yeah.
So we remove the consecutive. Okay, anything else on this? There'll be nothing else. We have deferred 3 items, correct? Okay, we have deferred 3 items. Someone move?
I'm happy to move.
With the deferral of the 3 items. All those in favour? All those against? The item's carried. We're going to lose Alderman Sexton shortly. I'm trying to get to the next one, please. Get there.
Fees and charges.
32.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, fees and charges, financial services. Any comment? No comment. Someone move, please.
I'll move the item.
All those against? No one against. Items carried. Fees and charges, City Innovation Division. I love these new words.
Happy to move, Chair.
I do have one little issue here. Is this the one I'm talking? Yes, it is.
Chair.
Yeah, chart. Look, I would like to see the component of the long-term parking, just that component deferred, with a further report back, because I look at some of these fees and charges for long-term car parking. I'm not going to mention any specific car park, but one of them is $28 a week. That is very inexpensive for a car park to park all day. Is it 5 days a week, isn't it? Or 6? 5. That is very cheap. So I'd like that reviewed and the officers reconsidering. That's my view. But only that component, so that way there we're putting everything through. So someone's prepared to do that. Yeah.
Happy to move that.
On page 152,
Yeah.
Chair.
Okay.
So with a view to the director to be
To review
looking at
it.
increasing potentially.
Increase and
Yeah.
review it, because
Yeah.
I when, like the top end, I think we're fine, but I think some of the middle areas and the bottom areas, to tell you the honest truth, I'd go and hire all the car parks from the council and go and rehire them out and make a profit. Seriously, So, Deputy.
Yeah, I wonder if some of these tables could have totals at the bottom of them. It just would, or unless the total is there. Are they above? No.
They are above, Chair.
They are above.
Yes.
So the overall total for off-street parking short term is 9,458. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay, Deputy, now?
It's an assumption based on the number of spaces used.
We get that information for a special, Chairman, rather than waiting too long on this? Or is there any sort of urgency with getting?
Well, I was just hoping that we can just approve it all and just a long-term code, just only one component's got to come back, that's all, so we can get on with it, that's it. You know?
Maybe we could I just ask through to the Director whether before Monday's meeting he could provide that advice?
Putting a bit of pressure on him.
Through you, Chair, I can have this ready for Monday's council.
Okay, so we'll have a special, okay. So let's defer this until Monday. Okay, someone move? Oh, I think so, because Alderman Sexton, all those in favour? All against? Items deferred. Item 7, action status report. Someone received and noted. Item 8, responses. Someone received and noted, please. Any questions on notice? No questions on notice. Someone move to close, please.
So moved.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Items carried. We go to close.